Enter his gates with thanksgiving.
And his courts with praise.
Praise his name.
Give
him
him
thanks. For the Lord is good.
His loyal love endures.
And he is faithful through all generations.
Give him
Give
thanks.
him thanks.
Exquisite sunsets.
The smell of newborn babies.
Mothers-in-law.
The taste of hot apple pie.
The crunch of autumn leaves under your feet.
A lost job.
The feeling of a warm blanket right out of the dryer.
The sound of ocean waves.
Sickness or injury, especially when it's the worst time possible.
The gathering of loved ones around your table.
The sun on your face in the morning.
Broken relationships.
Plush carpet through your toes.
The sound of your spouse's loving voice.
A friend's betrayal.
The family cat curled up in your lap.
My favorite coffee steaming hot.
Natural disasters.
Okay, seriously.
What?
What? What do you mean, what?
What are you doing?
Well, just saying things I'm thankful for.
We're supposed to list beautiful things.
Not horrible things.
What were you possibly going to say next? Stock market crashes?
Oh,
Ooh, that's a good one.
for real, why are you mentioning all of these bad things?
Well, we're supposed to give thanks in every circumstance, right?
1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18 does say, in everything give thanks.
Is that the same thing for all things and in all things?
Well, I'm not sure.
It seems to me those are different words, for and in.
All I know is that I want to be certain that I'm being grateful for the hard stuff as well.
So when I'm afraid I might lose my job, that's definitely a bad thing. But I can still be thankful in that circumstances because I know that God will never leave me and that he's promised to supply all my needs.
Exactly.
So should we continue? For the familiar smell of home.
For the kind embrace of a friend.
Car trouble on the way to work.
In all things,
Give
thanks.
Made you think, huh? That was pretty good. That was very good. Actually, children, you're excused. Go on down with Miss Pam and Mr. Michael. I think are going down today. So, there you go. All right, we're going to talk about faith today. And we're talking about being thankful as well. So as we look at faith, you and I have a lot of things that we have faith in, right? You got up this morning and the heat was still on in your house. You have faith that your furnace is going to work. You have faith that the lights will turn on when you flip a switch. You have faith that most of the time your car will get you to where you're going, right? We have faith in those things. We have faith in, that if the person that you had breakfast with this morning did not poison your food. Did you all find a taste tester beforehand to check? We have faith in those things. We have faith in our friends and our family. We have faith in the normal things in our life. Just take this water bottle. We have faith that it says purified drinking water. So I have faith that that's actually what's in here, right? I have faith in that because it hasn't been opened yet, the seal is still fixed. So we have faith that whoever bottled this didn't spit in it, didn't get, I don't see any dirt in there. But if I did see some dirt in there, I'd probably lose my faith in this company filling my water bottle, right? Especially if it was sealed. And if it wasn't sealed, I would be a lot less, I probably wouldn't even bother drinking it if it wasn't sealed. Even at my house sometimes, because somehow we have water bottles like that around my house occasionally. And I thought, now who drank that one? And I don't want to pass them out. I don't know if that one was sick or has a cold, and I thought, with all this stuff, I'd rather I dump it out or I boil it. No, I don't do that. But we have a lot of faith. Now, we're celebrating Thanksgiving on Thursday, and we think about the pilgrims as people of faith. And often we say that the reason they came to America was so that they could practice their religion in freedom. Well, that was true. But actually, where they were in Holland, they actually did have freedom to practice their religion. But they weren't English. And they were concerned that their families would be brought up English as well. And so because they escaped England to get the freedom of religion, had moved to Holland. But they liked Holland okay, but they didn't want to become Dutch citizens. So they decided to help the merchants out and go across because England was making these colonies in America. And one of the other reasons, it wasn't just because of their faith, they also wanted to share their faith with other people. They came to America so that they could share their faith with the Native Americans, with other people that were landing and coming to America. So they wanted to propagate their faith. They wanted to share it with other people. So as we think, Bradford wrote, the propagating and advancing the gospel of the kingdom of Christ to those in the most remote part of the world. So their plan was to come to America and to share their faith with others and to spread their faith. And I found that interesting because as we're going through the book of Matthew, we came across the story today in chapter 8. And, as I said, we believe and trust in many things, and we have faith in a lot of things. But especially, we want to be able to share our faith with other people. And that's why this message kind of got turned around from what I originally thought a few months ago when I put the title down. Because Monday nights, we're learning how to share our faith just in a regular communication, just in a regular conversation. How do we share our faith? So as we look to that, we're continuing through the book of Matthew, and today we're in Matthew 8. Now, Jesus had stepped away from the Sermon on the Mount, and he's went back to Capernaum. That's been their headquarters for quite a while now. And so Jesus and the disciples are in Capernaum. And as he's there, he's still preaching and teaching and sharing and doing miracles. And we're going to read about a gentleman that's going to come to him in Matthew 8, verse 11, 5 to 11. And we're going to read that together. And we're going to talk about this guy and how he shared his faith. All right, so if you've got your Bibles, that'll be up on the screen. And we're going to start at verse 5 of chapter 8. When Jesus returned to Capernaum, a Roman officer came and pleaded with him, "Lord, my young servant lies in bed, paralyzed and in terrible pain." Jesus said, "I will come and heal him." But the officer said, "Lord, I am not worthy to have you come into my house. Just say the word from where you are, and my servant will be healed. I know this because I am under the authority of my superior officers, and I have authority over my soldiers. I only need to say, 'Go,' and they go, or 'Come,' and they come. And if I say to my slaves, 'Do this,' they do it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed. Turning to those who were following him, he said, "I tell you the truth. I haven't seen faith like this in all Israel. And I tell you this, that many Gentiles will come and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob at the feast at the kingdom of heaven." So I want to give you a little background here. This is a Roman soldier. It's probably a Roman centurion. And he's called a Roman officer, or in this passage, he's called a Roman officer. Some places, in some translations, he is called a centurion. So, and as it was, centurions who were the backbone of the Roman army. The Roman army was divided into really large groups called the legion, and those legions contained 6,000 men. So a Roman legion is 6,000 men. And they separated those into 60 units of 100 each. And then each officer, a centurion, was in charge of 100, because that's a century. It means 100. And so they had 100 men. And the person, as I said, so this guy has a lot of responsibility. But he does have that major general or whatever it is above him. but then these 60 centurions are in charge of 100 men apiece. So he was in charge of 100 men. And so he is a man of authority. He is a man that when he came into a room, you paid attention because he had that kind of authority around him. He was probably, according to the Greek historian Polybius, he was probably from under King Herod, originally from Lebanon or Syria. So he's not a Jew. He's not from around there, but here he is. And he's coming. In that first verse, it says, when Jesus returned to Capernaum, a Roman officer came and pleaded with him. This Roman officer came to a Jewish rabbi and pleaded with him, begged him. He's coming humble. He is coming to somebody that normally he looks down upon. The Romans and the Jewish people were not buddies. And he was coming, and he had to humble himself to do that. And what I find really interesting as well, it says, Lord, my young servant lies in bed paralyzed and in terrible pain. He's coming humble, and he's coming to ask for somebody else. But he's coming to ask for a servant. 2,000 years ago, servants were property. So he is coming to heal, what normally they would have just said, well, if he doesn't recover, we'll just get another one. It was normally not a big deal. But this Roman officer actually cares about this person. It says it's a young slave, so it's a young person, but he cares. He cares about the poor. He cares about a slave under his authority. And he comes to a Jewish rabbi and asks for him to heal him. Now, as I said, he obviously believes that Jesus can do something about it, right? He believes that he's coming there and asking, and he doesn't tell him what to do. I mean, he says, and then Jesus says, well, I'll come and heal him. And so we're seeing this Roman officer, we're seeing this Jewish rabbi, Jesus, the healer, God's son, here saying, well, I'll just go to your house then, no problem. And this man continues to be humble. And as we examine this whole passage, I see a number of things. At first, we could be talking about the centurion's faith because he came to Jesus and said, well, you can just say the word and he can be healed from way over here. We could talk about that. We could talk about how it says in the last part of that passage that one day the Gentiles and the Jews will be eating together. And that table that alienation, that difference between them will be gone. We could talk about a number of things. We could talk about the compassion of this man. But like I said, what I saw, and like I said, might be from Monday nights, but I see a centurion, a man who recognized somebody that he cared about that needs to know Jesus. He is seeing somebody he cares about that needs to know Jesus. True, it was a physical need. He needs healing, physical healing. But like I said, he wouldn't have had to do anything. He could have just left it to be where he was. He's a man in authority. I imagine he's tried pretty much everything he could think of if he has cared for this one. He's probably called the physicians. He's probably prayed to his Roman gods. He probably did all that he could think of, and nothing's worked. So here he goes to Jesus. So we see a man that's putting his faith in our Jewish God. He's putting his faith in Jesus, and he's coming to him humble and in compassion. Now, he cared about this guy, and we all have people in our lives that we care about. We all have people in our lives that don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ, that have really not turned their hearts and their lives over to him. People that we love, people that are hurting, people that you care about. We all have people like that need to know Jesus. They might be family, they might be friends, they might be coworkers, they might be at school, they might be on the bus, they might be our neighbors. But I can guarantee you unless you're a hermit and never come out of your house, there's people that you rub shoulders with every day or regularly that don't know Jesus Christ. So what do we learn about that situation as we look into this? We know that the centurion knew what his responsibility was. The centurion knew what his responsibility was. At some point, this soldier realized his servant wasn't going to get help until he got him to Jesus, till Jesus touched his life. He wasn't going to get any help. Maybe he exhausted every other resource. But it seems he has heard stories about this healer. He has heard stories about Jesus healing people. So he has that hope, that faith, and he comes to Jesus. And he's going to ask him. And at some point, we need to recognize that there are people, it's not just a good idea, but there are people that need to know Jesus. Their eternity depends upon that, if they've come to know him. Because we know that one day we all will face that. Either we're going to heaven or we're going to hell. There's no in between. And we know that for each one of us. We need to realize that Jesus is exactly who he said he is. And that we believe what he said in John 14:6, when he told Thomas, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. Tom Rainier, in his book, The Unchurched Next Door, interviewed several hundred people in both the United States and Canada who don't go to church. So we're going to call them unchurched people. Now, it doesn't mean they didn't go to church at one time. That doesn't mean they've never been to church, but it means that they currently do not regularly attend church. Maybe they show up, for a funeral, a wedding, something like that, but really they don't really go to church. And here's the part of that Rainier discovered. His question was, do Christians invite people to church? Do they invite people they know that don't go to church to church? The heartbreaking answer is no. Only 21% of the church members invited an unchurched person to church. Now think about that. Out of 100 active churchgoers, 21 of them will invite somebody to church. The sad part is 19% of those that they invite are already Christians and already go to church somewhere. They only invite 2% of people that don't attend church anywhere. We're missing a lot of people. Followers of Jesus are missing a lot of people that need to be in church, that need to know Jesus. Now, if you had only been saved to go to heaven, when you became a Christian and that was the only reason you got saved was so that you could go to heaven, Jesus could have taken you that day and you'd been all done, right? He wouldn't have no reason to leave you behind. He could have said, oh, you're a Christian, zip, you're gone. But instead, he left us here. And he said, what he wants us to do is to take as many people as possible with us. And boy, that makes Satan mad, because he's trying to keep us all from going there. So that's his job. But in Acts 1:8, Jesus told his disciples that they were to be his witnesses. Acts 1:8 says, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in Judea and in Samaria and to the ends of the earth. When we become Christians, when we are filled with his Holy Spirit, it says we get the power to go to Jerusalem, to our neighbors, our immediate area, our little, communities. Maybe not so little, but our communities. To Judea, the greater part of southeast Minnesota. To Samaria, maybe to Iowa, or Wisconsin, or a little farther out. And then to the other parts of the world. We are called to go and tell somebody else. We are to be witnesses. That doesn't mean you have to be a preacher. It doesn't mean you need to know the 5 spiritual laws. It doesn't mean you need to know the Roman road. It means means that you go to somebody and share with them how you knew Jesus. You're a witness of what Christ has done in your life. That's simple, really. You talk to your friends all the time and tell them stuff that goes on. This is just telling somebody about the best thing that ever happened to you. And that's what it is, being a witness, just telling the truth from your own perspective, from your heart, from your perspective. Jesus didn't even make it hard. He just said, be my witnesses. He didn't say, go and preach. You don't call everybody to that. Some of them sometimes maybe shouldn't have called all of us to that either. But he calls us each to share our faith, to be witnesses. Now, this centurion also, he knew what his responsibilities weren't. He knew what he wasn't supposed to do. It's interesting to note that the centurion didn't try to tell Jesus what he was supposed to do. He didn't say, Jesus, I'm a centurion soldier, and I need you to come with me right now. And he didn't tell him what to do. He says, I have this sick servant. That's all he said. And Jesus said, I'll come with you. He came, he could have done that. He could have ordered him to go. And Jesus would have went, because that's what Jewish citizens did. You didn't tell a Roman soldier no. But he didn't have to. His responsibility was to tell Jesus and to get that relationship started. And we have to remember that too. Our responsibility isn't how somebody reacts to that message. Our responsibility is never to save them, because we can't save anyone. Our responsibility is just to tell our story, just to be a witness. And that's very important. You know, parents, sometimes you think you are in control of what your kids think and do, right? Some of us know better by now. But, we can say that, they don't really have a choice. But, they always have a choice if they're going to be obedient or not. They have a choice if they're going to follow in your footsteps. They might be just doing it now because it's the easier road and they don't want to be in trouble. But they might be just waiting till they hit 18, 19, 20, and they're just going to go their own way. It doesn't mean you don't keep doing it. It doesn't mean we give them license. But it does mean that we often think that we're in control of what somebody thinks and does. So you can't really take credit if they do really well, or you can't really take credit if they decide to make the bad choices either. So that's a good thing for those of you that carry guilt like that. It's not your fault. You've done everything you were supposed to do. That's their choice after that. I remember going to counseling, or up to the counselors at Century when one of our boys was there. And counselor was looking at the report card, and we had a young man in our family at that time that refused to do homework, especially economics, if I'm remembering right. I think he had a steady 0 in there. And she looked at me, and the teacher had told me that night that you need to make him, he's a junior in high school, you need to make him do his homework. And I looked at her, I said, you can do that if you want. I can't make him do anything. We've already taken away all his privileges. We've already tried to reward him by getting a driver's license. We tried everything we could think of. But he chose that grade. He chose to really not participate in high school. Thus, he dropped out eventually. But, there's only so much you can do for another person. You can't make anybody do anything. Even your spouse, no matter what they say, women, you are really not in charge of your household. And the men can't just give that over to you either, because that makes me angry when my husband says, we'll call the boss. I thought, nope, I'm not going to take that anymore, because that's not right. We all make our own choices. And God, we aren't responsible for what that other person does. We can't make somebody come to know Jesus. We can only present our witness to them. And that's what the centurion did. We can't fix people. We can only connect them to Jesus Christ. We're only showing the way as we learned on Monday night, this past Monday night, we're planting seed. We're planting the seed. Paul said, Apollos planted the seed and I watered it, or the other way around, and somebody else makes it grow. God's the one that'll harvest it. We just have to be faithful to do our part. We can help exhibit Christian principles. We can help them get rid of their sinful behavior. We can help people walk the way they ought to walk and maybe make a difference, but we can't make an eternal difference unless they choose to follow Jesus. Celebrate Recovery, we remember that as well. The one step that we have is we can't change anybody else. God, we're responsible for us. And we take it to God, and God changes us. That's the difference. The difference can only be made by God, and only when that person wants that to happen. Thirdly, the centurion was willing to pay the price. You're probably thinking, well, Jesus didn't charge him for the healing, and he didn't. But if you think about this authority, this Roman centurion coming with his contingent of 100 people or whatever it was, and coming in to look for Jesus, finding him in Capernaum, coming to him and pleading with him, he sacrificed his authority a little bit in front of those 100 men. He actually had to really humble himself to ask for help in the first place. And he had to come to and admit that he didn't have all the answers, that he couldn't do it without him. He had to let go of his pride and come to Jesus. At some point, he had acknowledged he couldn't fix everything. You know, we all struggle with that at times. A lot of us think we're in control of a lot of things until something bad happens, like in the skit. We're hearing all those things, natural disaster. We don't have any control over those. There are so many things in our lives that wake us up to the fact that God is still in control and that we need to submit to him. And that's where he was, recognizing that I can't fix this. And some of us are fixers. I'm a terrible fixer. I'm a control freak. And that's where me and daughters, they talk about the mother-daughter thing, and that's why those years were probably pretty tumultuous. I tried to make them do things that I knew were the best thing for them, but don't always work that way. And that's where we have to be careful. When we need to go forward and do what we need to do. We all struggle with questions like, when are we going to invite someone to church? We all get a little worried about that. We don't want to share it, and we think maybe they won't like us anymore. Well, there's nothing ventured, there's nothing gained, right? Because if you never try it, you're never going to find out. I learned that as a volunteer coordinator at Jefferson Elementary. I had to call volunteers all the time, call people to volunteer. And I learned, after about a dozen times more doing that, the worst thing they can say is, no. I thought, well, that ain't going to kill me. And I got used to hearing that word no. I didn't take it personally anymore. Because at first you think, oh, what did I do? Maybe I didn't ask them right. Or maybe they're too busy. Maybe I shouldn't ask them. And we do that with our faith. Maybe I shouldn't tell anybody about Jesus. Maybe that'll offend them. Maybe, and we go through that to ourselves. Paul wrote in Romans 10, 9-14, he says, if you openly declare that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is by believing in your heart that you are made right with God, and it is by openly declaring your faith that you are saved. As the scriptures tell us, anyone who trusts in him will never be disgraced. Jew and Gentile are the same in this respect. They have the same Lord who gives generously to all who call on his name. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they've never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless somebody tells them? We can't depend on someone else to share with the people in our lives. We can't wait for that to happen. If we go back to Rainier's book, The Unchurched Next Door, research tells us that 82% of the unchurched are at least somewhat likely to accept an invitation to go to church. That's 82% are somewhat likely. Now, that isn't a guarantee. Doesn't mean it's not going to take you a dozen times before they come. Means you have to be persistent sometimes. But 82% of the unchurched are at least somewhat likely to come with you if you ask them. 8 out of 10 of your friends and coworkers would at least say yes to an invitation at some point if you reach out to them. So what is an invitation? Well, many of us, it simply means asking them, hey, you want to go to church with me Sunday? Hey, we have a Christmas Eve program coming up. What are you doing? Or there's going to be, we have a lot of opportunities. Maybe come to the game night. Just check out. We're nice people, Come and check it out. It could be that simple. It might be saying, if you come to church with me, I'll take you out for lunch afterwards. I'll take you down to the golf course or to Uncle John's or take you out for Chinese, whatever. Or maybe if you come early, I'll have coffee with you or take you out for coffee first. But be willing to pay the price to invite people. It also means that there's people that are willing to pay a price every week so that when you bring somebody, there's room for them and that they feel welcome. Those of you, when you park by the road or if you park over by the trees, those people don't do that for their exercise. They do it so that there's room for other people to drive into the parking lot. There's people that sit up front so that there's more room in the back for those very prime seats, so that those are available for other people. For those of you that are like that, those of you that are willing to make that extra effort, to come early, to move forward, to leave that space in the parking lot and space in the worship center, we thank you. We thank each and every one of you because that you are making a difference. There are those who volunteer in the nursery and in children's church so that our guests and their children are being cared for in a safe and fun environment. We want to thank you for your ministry at South Troy. There are still others who bring snacks and guides people to the parking place. Make sure that they figure out where to park in the parking, because we have a small parking lot. But if you have some really good parking attendants, there's actually quite a bit of room out there. You just have to learn to help everybody move over. And there's, people come early to run the computer. There's a lot of background, a lot of people that come and do these small gifts. And they're not even small. I shouldn't even say it that way. And there are others that provide worship music and greet people at the door and do the announcements. To each of you that serve our children and our families for Sunday morning worship, thank you. That's huge. There's also the business of the church. And even in churches, there's a financial price to pay as well. We have a budget. There's money that needs to come in to pay for electricity, fuel, insurance, mortgage. I watched The Blind Side the other day, that movie, and right at the beginning, Sandra Bullock is saying, and she goes, every housewife in America knows that the first check you write goes to the mortgage, and the second goes to the insurance. Well, you know what? We have those things too. We have a mortgage on the addition that has to be paid every month. We have insurance. And like all of you, your insurance went up. The churches did as well. About $500 more a month. Big difference, unfortunately. All these things are because you sacrifice to give your gifts to the Lord every month. And we want to thank you for your commitment to give. We thank you. We couldn't have this building without you. So where are you at today? And don't tell me you're sitting in a pew at South Troy. Where are you with connecting people to Jesus? Christmas is one of those seasons that more people are more apt to invite somebody to come. So that's a great time to invite people to church. And we're going to have a skit every Sunday. just kind of like this morning, except they're going to be more family oriented, so the children actually will be able to come up and be a part and listen as well to that. It's supposed to be the boxers, but I'm not sure we're going to have the two characters wear boxes every week. But we're going to make it fun for all of us, but to help us to know what Advent is really about. A lot of us don't think about Advent. A lot of us didn't grow up with Advent. How many of you aren't sure what Advent means? Well, I don't tell anybody then. Okay, we skipped that part. Advent is the leading up to Christmas, is getting prepared for the arrival of Jesus. So that's what the next 4 Sundays will be about, and we're going to be looking at that. We have postcards that I left in my office, but I'm going to run down there and get them, or you'll have them available during dinner today. But I would like you to take a couple or 3 and take them to people that you have been thinking about inviting, or that you know or don't go to church, and just say, hey, this is what's going on at our church. I want to give you this card. You don't even have to say any more than that. That's just a good opening. And tell them, too, that you'll be there so that they'll know somebody. So that's what you can do, and we want you. And I also want you to think of somebody that you know, or even 3 people that you know that don't know Jesus. Start praying for them. Don't do this cold turkey. You need to pray for them first. You need to be praying for them every day, and just say, Lord, give me an opportunity to invite them to church, and just give me grace if they say no. Just because they don't all say yes. Some of us have done this numerous times and know what it feels like to have somebody rejected. But remember, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting your invitation. So just keep praying for them. And that's what we can do. And each Sunday, yes, like I said, that demonstrate a living faith, that is your responsibility. Your responsibility is to demonstrate your faith in front of them, to plant the seed, to invite, to share your story. Secondly, your responsibility is not to correct them, not to fix them, and not to tell them what they're doing wrong. That's not your job. And lastly, to pay the price. Could it be time spent? It might be a rejection. It might be, you might feel uncomfortable. But I don't know, most of us have felt uncomfortable sometime and haven't died yet. So we could probably try it again. If you really love people and want them to know Jesus, you want them to know the Jesus that we know, that you came to worship today, that we are a church, a family of believers that loves Jesus and loves people. Invite somebody else. Just bring them along. That's all we're asking. That's all Jesus is asking. Because if we really love Jesus, then we will tell. He says, go and be my witness. And that's what we should do. And you won't know, and they won't know if you never ask them. You won't know if they're going to reject you until you try it once or twice or 6 times. Who knows? Some of us get really good at no's. you just do it. And some of us, I'm actually, my husband's better at it than I am. It just takes some more practice. And it just takes that kind of personality. But we're all commanded to go and to tell. All right, the worship team, as you come up, we're going to pray. So who are you going to invite this Christmas season to church? To come along with you to worship. If you would stand with us, we're going to pray, and then we're going to sing another song together. Father God, thank you. Thank you for that centurion's example of being willing to humble himself and to go to you and to connect somebody he cares about to you. Lord, help each one of us to think of those people in our lives that we care about that don't go to church, might not even know you. And Lord, help us to be brave and faithful and to be your witness. And Lord, you will take care of the rest because you said you would. Lord, help us to be faithful. Thank you for your faithfulness to us. Thank you for this day. In your name we pray. Amen.